we'll restart the interview. So, okay, so today we are here with Mr. Jeff Hardee, the renowned Gong practitioner and researcher. I've been a big fan of Jeff's work for a long time, and super, super excited to have him today. So, Jeff, could you tell the audience how you got started in Gong and your spiritual journey and all this kind of stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. And before we start, I do want to thank you very much for the opportunity, Ken. I have actually watched your channel several times. I really enjoy the interviews you have. I think it's raw. I think it's reflective of the times of what a student has, interest these days, and how they go from teacher to teacher, or they find something that's new and let's try it out, see if it fits with my personality, or do I understand or actually can work with the practices I'm being asked to do, in the time that I have. So I think it's a good addition to this whole subject, and it for researchers like myself, it really shows the whole venue of what people are dealing with today. So I really appreciate what you have to offer.
Well, thank you so much. It's coming from someone like you. It truly means the world to me. I feel like I'm, not doing the best sometimes, but I'm, just getting confirmation from someone of your caliber. It just truly means the world to me. So I'm truly, truly appreciate your compliments. So, Mr. Hardee, how did you get started in Gong?
Yeah. And I'll apologize. I will answer. I'll apologize because I'm flicking my eyes from back to forth because we've been having trouble with the camera, and so I'm making sure that I'm looking at my notes. And
yeah,
like
to the audience, that this is our second take, actually.
Yeah,
so
I'm not having visions up in the sky.
Tech problems happen all the time. So
it kind of depends on how far we want to go back, but I've been around the block. I'm 56. I have some experience in the academic world, and that's where I'm really taking this. But before all that, back in the day when I was in early high school, one of my libraries was good enough to actually have the great encyclopedia set called Man, Myth, and Magic. And so it was a great several volumes of just delving into the whole subject of what you could call today parapsychology or UAP studies or whatever. And it was done by scholars and enthusiasts who just presented various subjects, running the gamut from ghosts to ceremonial magic to UFOs, and gave references and whatnot, and really fired the imaginations, lots of images and of luminaries of the day. And this was in the mid 80s. So that's when subjects like UFOs and Western ceremonial magic and the psychic tests and things like that were coming back. So I really got introduced and fired by that kind of encyclopedia. And funnily enough, at the same time as I discovered that, I discovered Carlos Castaneda. So I was reading through his texts and devouring those as I was going through that, and sort of thinking of, what kind of career do I want to have? Where do I want to go? As a young mind, inquisitive mind, and what I want to do for a job, and see where I can take my interests. And having an international background, I'm an Army brat, so I was dragged around the world from place to place. I have a really good appreciation for international cultures and languages and religions and things like that. So I give benefit to my parents for being able to handle all that and to survive 2 kids dragging around the world. But it's paid off in dividends, with just increased curiosity and whatnot. So that's a good background. In addition to that, that was also about the same time I started martial arts. So you've got a mixture of things that are all a cauldron, you could say, where fast forward, after a bit of career and after a bit of, working on a undergraduate degree in religious studies, and, trying to get into a graduate program where I could study things like mysticism and new religious movements, and being shut down, frankly, because I was a little early with that goal for a thesis topic, and had to still support myself, and ended up working in IT. And then only recently, as various things started coming to the fore and a lot more is available online, did we start getting more material about things like Mopai, You and I have talked about that a little bit in the background. The transition that seems to be happening, this is part of my dissertation now for my doctoral program in consciousness studies, where the Eastern masters have passed on a lot of the knowledge when it comes to Neigong, and Western teachers have gotten to the point where they've not only, in a sense, graduated from those programs, but they're now opening up schools, and they have students in the West, and they're teaching it as well. So I'm sort of following the flow of this new resurgence and the several groups that are out there, all sparked, of course. Again, it goes back to the mid 80s. What show that came out was The Ring of Fire, and that's when we saw John Chang, aka John Bahorudin, exhibit his abilities, and that fired the imagination of so many people, including myself. And what's fascinating, and we can get into a lot more, I'm just giving you the outline here, is that I just got back from a trip overseas, where I had the opportunity. I took the chance of going to Java and actually trying to find, from a picture alone, John Bahorudin's grave, and give him honor and respect, burn incense at his grave, and I was able to do that. I didn't think I would be able to do that. I thought it would be a wash. But it seems like, I'm coming full circle from, the mid 80s kid reading about Man, Myth, and Magic encyclopedia, seeing that Ring of Fire, video, and being blown away by John Chang's abilities, to just coming back from a trip where I'm right in front of his grave and speaking to him, if I can, as a passed on master, and thanking him for his inspiration. So there's a lot of room in there for more discussion, but that's kind of like the bookends of my journey at the time. And I'm continuing on with my research. I've collected a lot of data so far. I have more to collect, but I expect to finish my dissertation and have it published, both as a dissertation and as a nonfiction book, by the end of next year. So in the next year, you're going to see a lot of articles and other things coming out on my side. So it's pretty much writing time for me.
Very cool. Yeah, I've always said that we need scientific validation, which it exists. I mean, I've interviewed guys like Dr. Joe Gallenberger in the past. Like, it exists in the scientific community, but I think we need more of that. There just wasn't enough. And I just feel like guys like Jeff is just so valuable and so important. I mean, it's one thing for us like podcasters, YouTubers to be making content, but the more people that can show the mainstream academia that, hey, this is real. I feel like the more credibility that we can add to our work. So I truly, really, really, really am excited for what Jeff is doing. So Jeff, I just want to ask you about the grave real quick. So you didn't even know where it was? You just stumbled upon it?
Yeah, it's a good story.
Did you use your psychic? Sorry to interrupt you. Did you use your psychic sense to find this?
So what I don't want to do is it's a great story, but I don't want to beef it up to be more than it is. The lesson, the takeaway lesson is, if you ask people and you don't try to do it all yourself, you may get help and you may be guided to the right place. That's really the lesson. I do want to make sure that I emphasize, and I'll scatter this in. I do have a little bit of an agenda for our discussion. Is I want to make sure when I'm talking to people about this subject that I come across with my approach, because I think it's something that is, because it's my approach, of course, I think it's a good approach, but I want to re-interject the important quality of critical thinking into the approach to these subjects, especially when it comes to talking about conclusions that people try to make about how the world works or what man's place in the universe is and things like that. I think a lot of people are extremely premature in making those conclusions. And so instead, when we talk about things like what I'm about to talk about, I don't want people to assume that because an experience happens, that means that they now can conclude something about how the universe works. That's not what they can conclude. They can only conclude that they did something and they got some kind of result, and we need more actions, more testing, more data, more information from people. So I want to make sure that we tone things down a little bit, and we keep our critical thinking caps on when we talk about these subjects. So that being said, it's always been a thought of mine, to go and visit Java at one point. And I had the opportunity recently to go because I'm doing participant observation with 3 different Negong groups, right? I'm working with Authentic Negong, I'm working with Nei Chi Gong Fu, and I'm working with Lotus Negong International. So all 3 I am a student of, and I am doing daily exercise for. I do about at least 2 hours a day of meditational or whatever exercises, and we can get into the details of what those are. But, again, back in the mid 80s, a lot of this is inspired by, the imagery that John Chang came out, and then of course the subsequent books that came out by Jim McMillan and Kostas Danaos and James Van Gelder and whatnot. And I always thought it would be cool to go to Java at some place and at least get in touch with the spirit of the land. And I actually had a dream some years ago when I was doing an intentional practice of doing a lucid dreaming, where I gave myself a goal to find a particular object in lucid dreaming. And I decided, because I'd never dreamed of it before, to try to find a black cube. So over successive dreams for a couple of weeks, I had several encounters with things that were representative of that. And if you're aware of some of the symbology of a black cube, that involves earth as an element, as a, speculative kind of Freemasonic element. And one of my dreams I had, I was a spirit in Southeast Asia, in a land probably like Java, and I was some kind of elemental spirit basically that existed in the land. And for one of the parts of the dreams, I was walking around in this village area, and I was barefoot. And the thing that I knew at that time as a spirit was that this is just what people, who are poor and who are native to that land, they never really wore shoes. They didn't really need to. And I remember some village kids were kind of trying to make fun of me as the kid with no shoes, right? Even though that was common for indigenous people in this land that I was in. And because I knew I was an earth elemental spirit, I decided to play a trick on these kids. And in the middle of the street, I grew to a gigantic size and was basically staring them down and saying, "You should not make fun of the people who live in this land." And they were all big eyes and scattered and stuff like that. So I thought that was interesting. I've never dreamt of that area of the world before, but I felt like there was something that I definitely had to go and investigate and be part of the land, be part of the mountains. And so when I had this chance to go with the Nei Chi Gong Fu school to visit Thailand, which is not that far from Java, and there's a group you and I are part of, and I was chatting with another individual who I was able to meet in Jakarta for at least a day. I thought, you know what, Jakarta's on the west side of Java, Surabaya is on the east side of Java. John Baharudin is supposed to be buried at a graveyard in Surabaya. So I should try. I should do my best to try to fulfill this dream and this goal of trying to at least go in that area and see what I can do to at least try to connect a little further with this figure and, give honor to, his legacy and his teachings. And it just turns out that everything worked in terms of the timing, the plane trip. I found a very amenable taxi driver who I said, I want to go to this graveyard. I was asking several people in various groups that I'm part of, if anybody knows where this grave is, let me know. I was given a pretty approximate location, and you can piece apart some of the locations where Pak John has lived through the books that I mentioned, right? Through the books that Costa wrote and the books that Jim McMillan wrote and James Owen Gilder. They leave a lot of little pieces of the life of John that when they met with him. So I went, and for me it was good enough just to be on that side of the island, go somewhere on a hill, burn the incense, do the meditation I was planning on doing, and just call out to the spirit of John. But essentially, like I said, the lesson is just to ask people, and don't assume you can do it all yourself. So the taxi driver and I eventually, through 4 different people in that area, we were driving around. We eventually, sure enough, were brought directly to John Baharudin's grave, which was fantastic. And so I got an hour to spend there, and there was a hurricane in the area. But on that day, it was very clear. And in fact, when I was there and doing my meditation, the sun came out, and I got sunburned in the hour that I was there, because it was really, really on display, and it was beautiful. I took quite a number of pictures, panorama. There were several individuals there who helped take care of the graves, who were there and were curious about this, foreigner who was coming to see this individual. But I consider it to be just fortuitous, good timing. Maybe it's, the whole time when I was making the plane trip plans and getting ready to go, I was just calling out. And in one of my meditations that I do for Neji Kung Fu, at the level I'm at now, I was, during my meditation part, I was calling out to a spirit and saying, hey, Pak John, I appreciate you. I want to go and visit your island. I want to be there in your presence. And it worked out. So, I mean, what we can conclude from that, we can conclude it worked out. But I feel like I made a little bit of a connection there, that I got this full circle from what I talked about when I first started this. And it's motivated me to continue on with my research. And, I look forward to, whatever else I can do to, further the spirit of that land and the spirit of Negong. Mopai is just one expression of that. But I think it makes a good story.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you for that wonderful story. I'm so glad that you, mentioned, honoring Mr. Chang. You know what I mean? I obviously have a poster in my room and stuff. And, I obviously have a tremendous amount of respect for his work. So I try to honor him on a daily basis as well. Because, he really is like the, I hate to compare him to like, God, but he's like the symbol, so to speak, within our Qi energy industry, so to speak. So like I do try to, give him all the respect and honor as possible, and also to the Mopai ancestors and gods, so to speak. So thank you for mentioning that, and thank you for that wonderful story. So Jeff, you don't have to answer this question if you don't want to. I could cut it out if you like, if it's like, too private or personal. But obviously, training with, Mr. Rudi and Mr. Andrea and Mr. Mitchell. Out of the 3, so you are training all 3 systems simultaneously, and also, if you don't mind answering, is it okay to mix practices, and also, is it? Because I often hear that you should mix practices, but maybe perhaps as far as I know, Mr. Andrea and Rudi come from the same lineage, as far if I'm not mistaken. But combining Mr. Mitchell's practices also okay, and it's compatible with their stuff as well. I mean, if this is personal stuff, you don't have to answer. I could cut it out, but is it possible to answer this question?
It's a perfect question. In fact, it's an article I'm writing. There's several articles I'm working on now that, again, in the next couple of months, they'll be published, leading up to my dissertation. But it's important to address that. I want to go back one step. So John Baharudin, in my view, is a fantastic example of what is possible for humanity in and of itself. He definitely accomplished a lot. There are stories about things that his teachers accomplished, and maybe those are things that we might be able to verify, or maybe those are things that are just stories. But I think what I want to do is make sure that people, at least in my view and my experience right now, see those things as something that is part of a natural evolution of our humanness. It is something that is achievable by humans if they simply do the training. And I can say this because I have been training under 3 different systems. I have experienced Fa Qi from at least, I think, 4 or 5 people now, different expressions, and have had a chance now, a couple years, to observe as a researcher and as a practitioner, not just the practices, but also the personalities of the people who are both practitioners and those who are, either current or former practitioners, or those who are teaching as well. And I think as much as we may want to show, respect for folks, which is certainly, something that people can earn. I think I want to emphasize that this is a natural ability, that it is, I guess, for example, there may be some people who take a more religious view of Negong and say that this is a power that is a gift of the gods. Well, that's not something, honestly, I can speak to. I can only speak to what my practices result in, and the data that I collect as I do those results. Whether or not there are gods, whether or not it's a gift, I don't see that myself. What I see is something that is a natural result of what somebody would do, like, say, if they're training for a marathon. If you want to become a good runner, then and similar to if you want to start to collect Qi in your body, and see what that Qi will do for you, then there's going to be certain things that you need to do naturally. You need to have a good diet. You need to stretch. You need to train on a regular basis. You need to measure your progress, your breathing, your timing, how many calories you put in, that kind of thing. And progressively, over time, it's not going to happen in a week. It's not probably going to happen in 3 or 6 months, depending on if you want to do a full marathon or a half marathon. But if you put in the effort, the human body is capable of expressing the thing that you are reaching for as a goal, which is to run your first full marathon under a certain time or whatever. It's a reasonable goal. You can do it. And I think it's the same thing for those who are training in Negong. If they do the things that they need to do, then it is almost, it seems to be an inevitable result of the training, and not necessarily a special gift or dispensation or initiation or particular even ethical standpoint that anybody has. Is just like running. If you do the exercises right, you'll become a good runner. And if you cultivate correctly, you will have Qi and you will be able to express it. So I just want to make sure my perspective on that is clear.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for that explanation.
Yeah. So now I should answer your question.
Oh yeah. Certainly. Right? Go ahead.
Yeah. So, and this gets into that question because it's natural for people who are teaching a system to believe in the system that they are in, however they've created it or adopted it, that they think it's the best. Everybody thinks it's the best. Now, I come from an academic background that's in religious studies, and I made a point of going to as many different religious ceremonies as I could. I specifically studied new religious movements, so I know the human desire to try to think that whatever they're engaged in, whatever they put their effort into, is the best and the only of whatever, right? The full truth. And hopefully I'm not bursting any bubbles. If I am, that's my job. There isn't such a thing. There is no group, no book, no revelation, no download, no person, no experience that has the single truth for everything. Nothing. We all instead are collectively working this out on our own. And I think, in my view, that comparison, that critical thinking that we have as human beings is vital for us to actually get to useful truth, right? Which is, what can I do practically for the skills that I'm trying to acquire that will help not only myself, but maybe help my fellow human beings, that, as we journey through this thing called life. So I personally do not hold much water for anyone who wants to tell me in any venue whatsoever, whether it's a religious venue, political venue, social venue, or whatever, that says that you must follow what I say and only what I say, and because I say it's the truth, therefore you should do it. I say, prove it. Show me, demonstrate it, convince me. And if you can't, then, there's quite a lot of things out there that people have options for. And there's a lot of history for things that people have practiced with. And, if you're just presenting an idea, it's no better or worse than any other idea if you have nothing to back it up with. So that's why I'm using both a qualitative and quantitative approach to Neigong. Not being disrespectful at all. I'm being a scientist, and I'm invoking the original spirit of scientific illuminism. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with that term at all, but it's something that has been around for a bit as a philosophical approach. It's popularized by Aleister Crowley in the Equinox. I personally think he kind of went astray a little too far, but the original idea of the scientific illuminism is to balance equally science and religion, the method of science, the aim of religion, which means to vet those claims that religion makes using science, and then taking the results of that, the verified, independently, repeatable experiments that you apply to these claims of religion, to help you advance as a human being and help the human race advance as well. So I'm doing that for these groups. And because I'm interested in particularly how does the knowledge that was hidden away in the East for so many thousands of years, mostly, change when it's made this cultural leap. So I would argue since about the mid-'80s, and John Baharudin, John Chang, Dynamo Jack, he's responsible for it, whether he likes that or not. The fact is, he has a huge responsibility for firing the imagination of the West. Is that he, since around that time, more and more Westerners in the Western mind and the Western approach has been involved in Gong, and therefore the Eastern models that have been involved in that teaching, which is things like guru worship, being excessively loyal to a system or to an individual, paying an exorbitant amount of money for things that you don't get much of a return for. Those models, I would argue, are no longer working. And therefore, that's why the Western groups that have begun to teach other Western students are becoming more successful than the individuals who are trying to hold on to that knowledge in the East. And that Neigong itself is actually going through a transition period right now where it's not becoming westernized, it's becoming globalized. And so those concepts of the Western concepts of the scientific process, verification, independent replication, those kind of things, integration into medical science and whatnot, are vital for this knowledge to actually move forward where it needs to move forward. That if it stayed where it was as a type of initiation, teacher-student, secretive kind of thing, it was dying out. And there's a reason why those individuals from the East started teaching Westerners. Whether they received communication from a spirit or not, I can't say. But they made that decision to teach the Westerners. Westerners are now teaching other Westerners. who have their own schools, their own clinics. They're applying it medically as well as in martial arts, and that transition, I think, is what's needed. Therefore, still getting to your question, I feel justified in studying 3 groups at the same time. Very much like comparative religion approach, or various anthropological approaches. I'm embedding myself into these groups and basically saying, prove it. You say, if I do X, Y, and Z, I'll have such and such an experience. Okay, I'll do it. I'll not only do it, but I will record myself doing it. I will use EEGs. I will use tri-field meters or whatever else I can to try to gather data that I can utilize, as well as my own qualitative responses. I do an audio journal after every meditation, and track that. And I think one of the values of my contribution to this field as an anthropologist or religious studies or person or consciousness researcher or whatever, is I have, at just the short amount of time I've been doing this, for coming up on 3 years, you could say, under various teachers, is I have about 1,000 points of data right now for this journey for one human being, which is myself. And I have more data to contribute for that. And I think that helps to sift through a lot of the illusion that has been put into play, and a lot of the purposeful obfuscation or just personality quirks that people have when they say this one system is the only system, and it's the only one that leads you to the results or to the truth. That's just not my experience. All 3 groups that I'm studying, I consider to be groups that actually teach useful Neigong, in that if you follow their programs, you will accomplish some of the goals that are presented as the goals for Neigong. One is you get a better, healthier body. That's actually the core. You get a better connection to your physical self. This whole idea that various other groups have in their quest for spirituality of being anti-physical, anti-material world, or even anti-human is not actually something that Neigong promotes. The spirit of Neigong and Taoism, inner alchemy, is to embrace our humanness, to embrace the physical, to embrace the material, and to utilize that as part of our energetic evolution. We don't have to whip ourselves, to deny the body. There are certain things that are part of sexual abstinence. We can talk about that, but that it's not harming yourself to eat well, or exercise properly, or have a better appreciation for your impact on nature and things like that. So it's very material and physical positive. All 3 of the groups have that. They also all have a process by which they have individuals begin to form their lower donjins, collect energy, and then be able to do something with it. Now, the variations occur between the groups and what their end goals are. Some groups emphasize Fachi a little more. Some groups emphasize Fachi, but with the evolution of the person in their connection with the spiritual world, you could say. Some groups are really focused on the development of the Taoist, embryo. This idea that you can create a second self. It's an energetic self, and then if you do the work properly and transmute the qi in the proper way inside your body, that when you die, your consciousness can be transferred to that, and you can exist forever. I can't speak on that. I don't know anybody who's done it, but I can speak on the practices that I've done so far. And for all 3 groups, the teachers may not necessarily want to agree with me, but from my own practical experience, all 3 groups overlap extremely well, and I found them to complement each other very well, as if done properly. For example, Lotus Neigong has the most material out of all 3 groups. Damo Mitchell and his teachers teach the broadest amount of material. It's not just Neigong, it's Qigong, it's Bagua, it's Tai Chi, it's the I Ching. They have a cornucopia of material that you could learn, and you could honestly get overwhelmed and lost, and you sort of have to focus. So I focused on the Neigong program. I'm both in their online, Internal Arts Academy Neigong program. I finished year 1. I've started year 2, and I'm also in their foundations program, where I'm in the year 2 as well, where we go and we visit a couple times a year, and then we get a retreat with Damo himself. And I just had a retreat with Damo in June for like 9 days. They were extremely enlightening, very, very useful for my progress as a practitioner. The Authentic Neigong system, that was the first system that I worked with. It's very straightforward. It seems you could say it's stripped down in a way because Rudi has gone through quite a number of different teachers, and he's sort of filtered through the fakers versus the non-fakers, and has adopted a system that does produce people, because I've witnessed it, who are able to go from the beginning of the system all the way to the point where at least one of the measurement points, this isn't necessarily the end, but one of the measure points is, can somebody Fa Chi if they started the system. I can verify that in Rudi's system, I have seen several people be able to Fa Chi by following his system. Same thing with Nei Chi Gong Fu. I've worked within their system I'm at level 7 now. So that's been a little over a year. I've met in person with them a couple times. And last year, October 2024, I was able to witness over half a dozen people actually go through a test in which they were able to demonstrate Fa Chi as well. So I know that Nei Chi Gong Fu is able to take somebody from the start and go through their system, and they're able to Fa Chi. So often the question is, well, are they all effective? It depends on what your goal is. And like I said, each of the systems at their base, my opinion right now, is that there's extreme overlaps from them, and they can all complement each other really well. But then they do start to diverge in what their ultimate goals are. But when it comes to the basics of getting in touch with your body, getting a healthier body, starting to collect chi, starting to move that chi around, and to start having some effects from moving it around, all 3 of them are effective in my opinion. So my doing all 3 of those at the same time, I don't see as a problem in the way that I've integrated it. Maybe the way I've integrated it has been selective enough so that it hasn't become a problem. But again, I've been in martial arts. I've been in yoga. I've practiced other things as well for many years before I even came to Neigong. So I had an idea of how I could integrate this and not blow up. The scare tactic is, if you do one thing that will cause a deviation for you, you're gonna die. No, you're not. No, if you really press the teachers on this, none of them will actually say that. They'll say, no, instead, you may feel uncomfortable. You may have some problems. And if you have those problems and don't listen to your body, then those problems may continue, and you could have some maybe health problems down the line. But the great thing about Neigong is, if you start getting some kind of a negative result from it, just stop. Like if you're doing sprints and you're trying to practice doing your marathon, and you've never run a marathon before, and you start pulling muscles, are you going to keep running? No. Just stop running for a while, and your body will heal, because that's what the body does. It's really good at healing itself. And then reevaluate what you're doing, and then try it again. Maybe ask a teacher or whatever, do that. So I would caution anybody when it comes to the scare tactics and probably the things that people repeat because they've heard it, but it's really become something that's just repeated and not necessarily something that is verified as being an actual danger. So I can attest, as a person who's doing all 3 for the last couple of years, that has only helped me. It's only improved my horizons on several levels. And I'll be publishing all my results, so you can double check it yourself.
Yeah. Thank you for answering those questions. That was really cool. I love what you said about Nigong is sort of, so to speak, uh, has evolved thanks to the Westerners taking it more of a Western approach, if you will, and making it more not quite advanced per se, but like they're doing well with the system by adapting what they learned from the Eastern arts, so to speak. So, I love what you said about that. Kind of reminds me of like what we see in martial arts now, judo went to Brazil and adopted into BJJ, and the BJJ started MMA, and now we see martial art at its finest. Like, it kind of reminded me of that a little bit, where guys like Mr. Kostas and McMillan adapted qigong and kind of brought it to the West, and since then a lot of people got interested in Nigong, and now we see various different practitioners and stuff, various different practitioners and teachers that arrived, because of the inspiration they got from these people, and just kind of reminded me of that. So it's pretty cool. I'm just really, it's really cool that we see advanced teachers that Jeff is learning from and stuff, emerging. So it's just really cool. And there's several other people, we were in a secret group right now. There's several other high level practitioners within those groups as well. So very cool stuff for sure, indeed. Jeff, when do you think you can be? Or sorry, can you Fachi right now? Or
no.
Oh yeah, I didn't think. When do you think you can actually Fachi?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and this gets into the different approaches of the different groups that I'm studying under. Many times in discussions within every one of these groups, the subject of Fachi comes up, and it's very telling, the responses that I get from either students or teachers to the subject. From a researcher's perspective, Fachi is one of those elements of this process, this biological process, that is measurable. It is something that you can experience directly. It is something that you can do, because I've witnessed quite a number of people who are able to actually do it, who couldn't do it before. And it is a marker along the path. Whatever the ultimate end of the path is, I can't speak to. I'm not there. But I can speak to what I've witnessed so far. And I think that it is important to address the fact that if you start to collect qi in your body and you continue to do it in a certain way, then this will be a natural result. It is something that simply occurs for human beings as they get more and more concentrated, the qi in their body, and as they transmute that. Now, some groups will emphasize overpacking the qi in the lower danshin and trying to get it as strong as possible. And some groups will emphasize opening up the meridians more and just allowing the qi to flow as much as possible. And the result is the experience of the qi coming from those individuals. So whether or not a teacher wants to tell their students that Fachi is a worthwhile pursuit, or is only a stage along the path, or is just one of those things that could be done, but maybe it's a distraction. The fact is that it will happen, from what I can tell, if you simply follow the process, and it's just a natural part of what a human body can do. But its expression will be different. So since I've been doing the work pretty consistently for the last couple of years, I have made progress such that I know that I'm on my way to being able to do it. I've been tested recently by an individual in Malaysia this year for my meridians, to see if my meridians were open. I can go back a year prior where I experienced my first Fachi, and that was from Master Zhou Gansheng. and that was in Sweden in October 2023. And when I was tested to see if I had any kind of chi in my abdomen stored, and I was told that I have a little bit. I was doing some exercises prior to that, but then when my meridians were tested, I had various blockages in the meridians. Fast forward a year and quite a lot of exercises after that. I was tested by another individual in a related lineage of Master Joe. This is from a Master Zhang. He was a student of Zhang Feng, and I don't remember his other name, unfortunately, right now. But he also did a test of the meridian system for myself. I will be publishing those videos at some point, and I'm happy to say that my meridians are now clear. So all 5 days, I had a clear experience of the chi coming through, and without any blockages in my meridians. So what I was told then was that I've made a lot of progress, and that possibly, I'm going to say, within another year, I should be at the point where I can attempt to fa chi with assistance. So the usual recommendation is you don't try to fa chi all on your own. There could be complications for that. Instead, you want to have a little bit of assistance with somebody who's guiding you through that process. But I think I'm about a year away, and it is a focus of mine. I'm not going to, start this whole journey without having some kind of external expression of chi ability. I think personally it is important for me and for my journey, and then what I do with it afterwards is up to me. Whether or not I want to use it in scientific basis for tests to see what chi is or what it can do, or whether or not I want to use it in my own therapeutic practices. It's something I'll decide when I get there. But so to explicitly answer the question, no, I cannot fa chi now. I did ask my teacher last October if I could try. I was told no, that I could not try, but that in within a year, when I next go and see that individual, that I would be allowed to try. There's discussion we can have on that whole decision, since it's not a decision that I made, but I can somewhat understand where the perspective came from. But the more point is that I can tell that I am making progress, and we can talk about the specific signs of what those are. And I do think that if I continue the way I'm continuing based on the signs that I'm receiving, that within a year I should be able to do it. Again, it's a natural expression of the human development in Gong, and I expect to be able to do it.
Excellent. Yeah, that's really awesome. And thank you for that answer. Speaking of Fachi, kind of an extension to this stuff that we were talking about with Fachi. You met my friend Chris Fazio, I believe, at the Psy Games. I think you met my friend Dahlia as well as Hardee and them. Let's talk about the Psy Games a little bit. We talk about how, within the Western world, does the Psy abilities are becoming more established. Where do you see, Mr. Hakim's putting on the Psy Games stuff? Where do you see, the Psy Games going? Do you think it could potentially become a real sporting event, so to speak? Or, do you think, what is your opinion on the Psy Games? Do you see itself becoming an actual league, so to speak? Or, or I know, within our group, with our secret group, there's been some criticism regarding it, which is completely understandable. I understand from the traditional lineages, they treat this stuff very sacredly, and they treated it with, earnest respect. I completely can respect that. But what is your take on the Psy Games and where it's headed right now?
Yeah, so Hakim is inspired for this entire effort, and I think that everybody who attended the games and saw the results of his inspiration, took that inspiration into their own lives, and it's only going to explode outward from there. It's a long time in coming. There actually was a group who did something similar. I think it's the International Remote Viewing Association. If I looked back, I think a couple of years ago, they actually did something similar. Just didn't have as much of a the timing probably just wasn't enough for it to capture the public's attention. But so we should make sure that it is known that there historically were other attempts to do something similar. But the way that Hakeem put this together, and where he made it a family-friendly, open, non, how do I say it? It was a merger of gamification plus scientific inquiry plus individuals who just wanted to try it to see whether or not they actually had abilities or not, and to me, a prove it kind of attitude. If you think that you have these abilities, that you can use on demand, then get in front of a stage and do that. That only actually expands all of our horizons when you do so, and I encourage people to do that. I have a lot to say about certain criticisms about things that were even brought up within the Psy games. Like there was a whole panel about ethics of Psy, which again I'm writing another article on, but I've said very clearly that I think that is a premature discussion whatsoever, and that's not something that we should be delving into in this moment, because basically the slippery slope of that is the creation of psychic police, and that's something I would never support and will actively work against that creation. That this idea of ethics of Psy, if you place it again in the context of something like running a marathon, are we going to have ethics board for people to be able to run, skip, or jump, or swim, right? That you're going to stop me from using my natural human ability of being able to run quickly, or being able to kick a ball in a certain area, or to throw a ball or a ribbon or something. That it's just as silly to think of those kind of ethical considerations and whether or not we should get permission from other people for somebody to be able to do something like running, jumping, or swimming, as it is from somebody using Psi abilities. Because Psi abilities are just like those other physical abilities, are something that human beings have done for millennia. And it's not something that just happened in 2024, 2025, or even prior, that we have to come up with these rules and regulations for. It's something we need to understand. And again, I want to emphasize on just how natural it is. Everybody does Psi all the time. We just don't call it Psi. But it becomes more extraordinary when somebody has a higher ability of doing that, like Dahlia, who is able to impress us with tests that have been designed to show that something is done higher than chance. But do you not think that people who are in sales or different types of business are not necessary? That those who aren't attracted to those professions aren't those who maybe have a little bit of telepathy and are able to actually start to begin to get a sense and read the body language of and whatnot of the people that they're trying to make a sales for? Of course they are, right? So this idea that this is something new is silly. It's something that human beings have done for a while, just like collecting chi in their bodies. Maybe the knowledge itself of specific techniques has been, in the past kept secret. It's pretty much all out in the open now. So it isn't necessarily something that we need controllers for or gatekeepers for. So I fully support what Hakeem has done with the Psi games. I'm critical of his discussion on the ethics for it, but I think that the idea of actually presenting it as something that's natural, as something that both human adults and kids can do, that we're just going to try 5 categories and put people up head to head and come up with the tests as we go and improve. There's a big effort by his team to ask those who participated to see, what criticisms we had about how the tests were designed and who was allowed into test and things like that. And there's always room for improvement. But the fact that it happened, it was successful. I'm expecting to see more scientific papers of all the scientists who were there about the games. And if not, I definitely want to see it for next year. And I don't see it as going away. I see it as just growing. We've got to, in my mind, remove the restriction and the veil of fear from these natural human abilities, and we must explore them. Again, my opinion, that different systems of control have been invoked before, the Psy games and since the Psy games. Same thing as people who are pursuing cities, different systems of control and religious systems and whatnot. I think are passé, and they need to be bypassed. We are in a new era. We've got the 22nd century to move forward to. We are not alone. We are not just the only conscious beings on this planet. There are other beings that are visiting us. The evidence is extraordinarily clear for that. And we need to approach those beings using all of our abilities and not to be restricted from or be placed under these systems of control to stop us from exploring those things which are a natural part of who we are. We need to meet those non-human intelligence at their level, and we can only do that, in my view, if we explore these abilities to the fullest extent that they are capable of being explored.
Well said, Jeff. I really like, how you said, basically, like, the people that are critical about like the ethics of science, stuff like that. That's maybe perhaps like an outdated way of thinking, and like then we need to basically look at it like kind of like you said, why, it's like the same thing, you know what I mean? Like athletes that are like running and stuff, or athletes that are, I don't know, doing like bodybuilding or something. I mean, it's no different. Like, why can't they present themselves or present their progress? Like, what's the difference? Yeah. I love how you said that. And I always kind of felt the same way as you. And I'm so glad that someone of your caliber is saying that, because like, man, like the amount of criticisms I receive. And I thought part of it is because like, I think I'm like young and kind of immature looking too. Like, so, I mean, the criticism I received is, compared to someone that more establishes, not comparable. Like I probably receive more criticism from presenting this stuff and conducting in like an unprofessional manner, quote unquote, more than anybody in the industry, perhaps. So
ask yourself, if I could jump in, ask yourself, anytime you receive that criticism, ask yourself, where is it coming from? Usually, and this is probably going to tick off some people, but I'm open to the debate and I'm open to the demonstration. It's either the criticism about the pursuit of cities is usually coming from either people who can't do it themselves. Well, they have no business criticizing others if they can't do it. 2, people who are simply repeating what they were told from whatever system of control they're coming from. There's no truth there. There's no independent verification there. There's no examples that you can show me that pursuing such and such actually gives problems. If you can present that case, if you can show me the data, I'm happy to follow your advice. But if you're simply echoing something you were told, we are past that. We need to move past that kind of teaching modality into something that is a lot more, again, scientific based, based on replication of data, based on peer review, all that kind of stuff. We need the debate. We don't need people holding us back. So wherever that criticism is coming from, to me, it's just a lot of hot air, and it has no value for me as somebody who is a practitioner. If someone wants to make a claim and says, do X, Y, and Z, and you will get result A, that's my approach. I will do those things, and I will tell you whether or not I got result A. And if I don't get result A, I'm going to ask you why. Where'd you get your data from? Are you just repeating that again from generations and generations of just talk, or can you actually demonstrate it? And I think we're desperately at the stage in our evolution where we need to actually demonstrate these things and only proceed with those things that are demonstrable, not just that are based on pure belief. Pure belief needs to go away. It's not something that is useful for humanity anymore. Blind belief, pure belief, we need to get rid of that, and we need to move forward in something that is a lot more scientific based.
Yeah, I'm so thankful you're bringing the subject up, Jeff. Like I said, I want to reiterate that, I've been, the end of criticism so many times. So, someone who's has an academic background, who's very mature and a very kind-hearted person, like Jeff saying, this is like, it means the world to me. So it's like almost like a relief, like a huge burden lifted off my shoulder almost. I'm so thankful right now. Speaking of that, I was honestly hoping, to do this interview for about an hour, but we're a little past it, which is perfectly fine. We can go a lot long.
But I got time.
Yeah. Speaking of someone who's like demonstrating a lot, kind of like, no holds barred, that just putting out a lot of great demos out there. A gentleman you connected with, my mentor as well. You connected with my mentor, Antonio Telekinesis, I know in the past. This is the last question I want to ask you. I'm sure you've seen his videos, and you obviously been interviewed by Trevor as well. So, I've been interviewed by Trevor as well. What is your take on aerokinesis? And do you think, and one more thing, do you think the mainstream academia can possibly accept aerokinesis? Because let me say something real quick. I've spoken to a quote unquote spiritual journalist before, and he said the topic of airbending, aerokinesis, he said he will not touch because it looks too unreal. That was his response. I'm not going to reveal who this individual was. That was his response. And I know many people who said, I will do telekinesis, but aerokinesis, not touching it. I am afraid to personally put on aerokinesis demos. I took it off all my YouTube channels. It's just on my old Facebook videos. But, Antonio and Anthony doesn't hold back. He still puts it out there. What is your take on airbending and aerokinesis? And do you think Gong can possibly improve aerokinesis? And also, like I said, do you think this could... One more thing, sorry, I keep saying one last thing, but I feel like aerokinesis is like it's the final thing. If we can understand what the wind is, I've spoken about it many, many times. I even thought about creating a documentary called Windspiracy before. If we can understand what the wind itself is, don't you think it could possibly unravel what this reality actually is, and where energy is coming from and things like that? So I just want to say that real quick. So I want to reiterate the question one more time. What is your take on aerokinesis? And do you think the mainstream academia can possibly accept that, and you can possibly present that research to the schools as well?
Yeah. So let me ask you one question.
Sure.
As well. Have you ever received Fa Qi?
No.
Okay. So that's good. I hope that you do. And when I'm able to Fa Qi, I'm happy to demonstrate it for you. Okay. One of the things that, one of my goals, and the reason why I chose participant observation for my study, is because as much as I've tried to collect data from various people who can do Fa Qi, and that I've received it from at different strength levels based on their training, it's been difficult to collect hard data from them. I can experience it, but I haven't been permitted yet to be able to do things like have a tri-field meter available or a static meter, or I have used some other devices, but nothing as clear cut as I want in terms of checking voltage and amperage and things like that. So my fallback position is, well, if I can't get one of these masters in a lab or mobile lab to be able to collect that data, then I have to do it myself. So one of my goals is to be able to develop myself as an instrument of Qi, to be able to express it so that I can then do these explorations you're talking about and use the Qi in all different manners, and then have that actually measurable in whatever way I can, in whatever lab that I can. If there's any scientist who's out there especially those in consciousness research or, biology or whatever, who would like a ready subject who already has quite a lot of data set up and who is willing to get hooked up. Just don't cut into me. If you want any other kind of hookup, I am happy to demonstrate. And I think it's important to get data from somebody before they're able to do the expression of chi, and then after they're able to do the expression of chi. That's all preparatory in saying that, one, yes, I think scientists are able to study all of this because just like we did during the Psy Games and just like parapsychologists have done for decades and decades, they've been able to develop experimental setups so that you can try to capture an effect, whatever the effect is. You propose a hypothesis, you develop a test for that, and then you have somebody try to repeatedly do whatever that thing is and see whether or not you get that. So that's just standard science. Every single thing that can be expressed in this material world can be studied by a scientist and can be published in a peer-reviewed journal so that others can try to replicate that result. So every single thing that, for example, is on Trevor Seven's website, whether aerokinesis or other types of kineses, yes, absolutely can be studied and should be studied, and no one should feel afraid not to present that if it's something that they legitimately are able to produce themselves. Even if somebody is producing something and whatever you consider to be aerokinesis happens, but doesn't happen as a direct cause of what you're trying to do, it is still useful to study that because it's something that is part of our human makeup to be able to do. So I think that we can study it. We should study it. And I think that everything that is presented in Trevor Seven's website as all types of kineses are just terms that we're throwing out to try to separate our understanding of what something is. It could all be one thing. It could just be chi interacting with whatever it is, and based on which Danshin point you're starting the chi from, or whether or not you're using the yin side or the yang side, or whether or not you've overdeveloped in a certain area where you're placing your mind, or what else you can throw in there, may be the expression of what it is. So absolutely, it can be tested. Whether or not it's real as a thing, let's find out. Right? I've seen quite a lot of videos where it seems like an individual is doing something and some effect happens, but we need to be able to collect the data on it to replicate it, different conditions, different people, on demand as needed, and then we'll be able to see. But there seems to be something going on in terms of cause and effect for people to do that. I mean, you mentioned several other people that you've interviewed that are able to do demonstrations. Do you think that all of them are lying to you? Do you think that all of them are faking it? That they're not legitimately trying to do something? There are people who do that. There are people who are pure fraudsters. There are people who have so much greed that have blinded them and are especially trying to take advantage of Westerners through that greed, that we need to call it out. So if you do see that, and if it is something that comes up, then I encourage you to say something about it. I will. I'm working on articles to specifically call out what I see as unethical behavior by people who claim to be doctors for things that I don't think are that can be justified in terms of costs for their treatment. Even if something is resolved, whether it be a medical issue or whether it be something that's quote unquote meridians, the prices that are being thrown out I see are so extreme that it needs to be called out, and Western students need to be okay with being good consumers and saying, no, I'm not going to pay thousands and thousands of dollars for something that you won't tell me what the ingredients are. I don't need to know the formulation. I don't need to know exactly how you put it together, but I should know whether or not something has arsenic, right? Or placenta, or an endangered species or something like that. As a good consumer, in a worldwide market, you have the power to demand of the people who are supplying something for you, things, assurances, whatever, instead of just taking things on blind faith. Again, I think we need to move past that guru worship and move forward to demonstrable, repeatable effects. So, I think it's important to present those things and to study them and to call out those who are trying to pull the wool over our eyes, but also to celebrate those who are willing to put themselves out there and to try and to see if whether or not they can present these abilities. Maybe their conclusions about what it is are incorrect. Okay, that's just going to shake out in terms of the testing. And that's why I keep throwing out the idea of critical thinking, just because I've witnessed somebody being able to send a bioelectricity into my body extremely strongly doesn't mean that I think that that person is an immortal. They're just able to produce electricity in their body. That's all I can speak to, right? I think we want to tamp down these extreme conclusions that people are trying to make about the nature of the universe based on one event. We need to be a lot more critical about these systems of belief and control that are out there. Instead, be more practical, because from a Taoist perspective, it should be practical. It should enhance your life. So anyway, I do soapbox and I'm starting to use it.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for that answer. Yeah, this was a really, really awesome interview. And, like I really love the fact that, Jeff is really supportive of like the psi abilities, and, he's like, holding nothing back. He's being very truthful. He's being science-based, evidence-based. All this stuff is great. And I'm just so excited for what Jeff is going to be presenting to the world. And we need. I just want to say one last thing, guys. We need more guys like Jeff. And like, man, like I wish if we had like 10 solid guys like Jeff, man, like this psi ability can change. And I'm truly thankful for Jeff for coming on today and
thank you,
talking about all these things. And
I should mention that I'm also not just a talking head here. So I said earlier in the interview that I'm receiving signs of my progression in Neigong. So I'm starting to film that. And one of the signs that I've talked about, and I've actually, when I've gone on some trips, I've shown some people. It's kind of a little bit difficult to see, but there is a practice that I've learned from Lotus Neigong, wherein you can make a connection between your Laogong points on your hands and the chi that you've actually collected in your lower abdomen. And based on that connection, you can then move that chi around in your abdomen, and it is visible to somebody else that it's moving. So I've actually bought these little dots that they use in motion capture, and I'm going to place it on my abdomen itself. I don't think you can see it when it moves through my arms, but I know for sure when I place it on my abdomen, I can actually make things happen in my abdomen, which are not something that you can do with pure muscular control. For example, there's a certain motion where you're actually kind of moving your hands at different horizontal levels. And if you've made the connection between your Laogong points and the chi in your abdomen, you'll actually see the top part of your abdomen shift in one direction and the bottom part of your abdomen shift in the other direction. You can't do that with just pure muscular control or with breath control, whether you're breathing in or out. And this is while I'm holding my breath. And so what's happening there is actually the formation of the magnetic field that, again, another article I'm coming out with on my proposal for how the chi is expressed within the small intestines and how the magnetic field actually gets formed. But you can actually see this motion under the skin, is what I'm saying. You can see something moving that it cannot be accounted for by pure muscular control, and it's something that I want to demonstrate, and I'll show on my website soon. But I'll also, again, trying to get into a lab so that other people can confirm what I'm able to do. So, and that's one of the signs where I know that I'm developing chi in my body, and I'm slowly able to open up and to express it outside of my body.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much, Jeff. So I will put Jeff's website as well as. Do you mind if I put your Facebook link in the description as well on YouTube?
Yeah, you can just Facebook. I'll just say that I'm not on it a ton. So if people DM me, give me some time before I get back with you. But a lot of my research is all going to be done on my website, weirdenergeticarts.com.
Awesome. Oh, awesome. Okay. Yeah. So those links are below, and you can check it out. And once again, Jeff, thank you so much. I'm so grateful. I didn't know really what to expect. I was just excited to have you on, but I didn't expect to have like a huge relief, huge, like bird lifted off my shoulder from someone like you. I'm so thankful today, Jeff. So
yeah, well, I appreciate it. Again, your channel has led the way for a lot of people to talk openly about these subjects. So it's great work, and I hope to be able to chat with you again and unfold this journey together.
yeah, certainly. Yeah, I let's definitely stay in touch. So okay, well, thank you, Jeff.
All right, thank you.